split. All right. Let me get into some NFL stuff. I mentioned that we'll start to dive into the NFC North, which, in my estimation, is also one of the more interesting divisions in football. And it is. Because I think when you look at the NFC North, everyone thinks that the Green Bay Packers are basically just going to run away with the division, right? Aaron Rodgers is a man possessed. He's going to come back. He's ticked off. He's not retiring just yet. We're going to give you some weapons. We're going to try to keep you happy. Hey, listen, that relationship ended last year, not only with the head coach, but also with the front office when they took the ball out of his hands late against Tampa Bay in an NFC Championship game in which Tom Brady threw not one, but two, but three picks. So the NFC North this season, you know, you have the component now with the Vikings and Cousins making all that money. Rodgers back with Green Bay. Chicago, your guess is as good as mine. Whether it's going to be the young kid, whether it's going to be Dalton. And then you look at the Detroit Lions. And I think they were better off with Stafford. It's like a flip-flop, right? Because now you got Goff back there. And for so many years, it was Stafford. And he put up these gaudy numbers, and he was always on a bad team. Now, last year, he quietly threw for over 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. The offensive line didn't help him out. He was sacked 38 times. He's with the Rams, in comes Goff. So let's start with the Detroit Lions. I think the Detroit Lions might be one of the worst teams in football this year. And I'll tell you something else. If you are actually contemplating, if you are looking at the win total for some of these teams right now, be very careful, especially in this division. Be very, very careful. I don't like what I'm seeing right now. I don't. So this is the latest. The projected win total for the Detroit Lions is 5. Odds to make the playoffs plus 620. Odds to win the NFC North plus 1,900. You don't have to worry about the NFC. Plus 10,000. And if you've got some stones, you think they're going to win the Super Bowl, plus 18,000. That's not happening. They got a shaky defense. They got a shaky secondary. We know that. They lost some players in the secondary. They lost Galladay as well to the Giants. Look who they open up with. They open up with San Francisco, Green Bay, and Baltimore to start the season. Folks, L. I think they do go on the road and they beat Chicago because I think Chicago's a bad football team. Then they lose to Minnesota. They lose to Cincinnati. They lose to Los Angeles. Look, and I'm going to give them a win against Philly. But you're 2-6 after 8 games. After the bye in Week 9, they come back on the road against Pittsburgh and Cleveland. So you've got AFC North opponents both on the road. They play, because we always know they play on Thanksgiving, so they have a stretch, 3 games in 11 days. I was going to give them that loss against Chicago, but now I'm going to give them that win. So you come off the bye, now you're 2-3, but then you lose to Minnesota, so you're 1-3 in those 4, that pocket of games, and you're 2-6 to start the season. So what are we looking at? We're looking at 3-9. You know where I'm going with this. Then I think they basically, from that Minnesota game, guys are already talking about business decisions, holidays right around the corner. They lose to Denver, Arizona, Atlanta, Seattle, and Green Bay. The Lions, to me, are a 3-win team. They're a 3-win team. Their projected win total is 5. I would hammer the under. I would hammer the under if you're going to play any teams in the NFC North. So that's the Lions. So you're not. I don't think you're making money on the Lions this year. Let's go to Chicago, which is a very interesting bird. The Chicago Bears win total, and I jumped on this as futures like 2 months ago. It's 7.5. Their odds to make the playoffs are plus 200. Their odds to win the NFC North are plus 500. Their odds to win the NFC, plus 1,500. Their odds to win the Super Bowl, plus 5,000. And it's all about getting Justin Fields reps. That's all it is, because Andy Dalton's not the answer. And now you're dealing with Jenkins, your left tackle, who's out. I think this can be an ugly, and I know Bears fans, I think this can be an ugly season in Chicago. Find me 7 wins on their schedule. You can't. You cannot find me 7. And this is where you guys are going to be like, oh, my God, Q, you're absolutely nuts. You're crazy. And I'm going to get pounded on this. Ready? They open up on the road at Los Angeles. I have to do it. I'm giving them a loss. I think that kind of sets the table for where I'm going with this. Home against Cincinnati, on the road against Cleveland, at Detroit. I should say home against Detroit. That's one of Detroit's wins. On the road against the Raiders. Home against Green Bay. On the road against Tampa. Home against San Fran. On the road against Pittsburgh. Now, don't drive off the road when you hear this. I have the Bears losing every single solitary game up into the bye week. Maybe by the grace of God, they win that first game of the season if Dalton's a starter and they're feeling pretty good. So even if we go by that, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going either 0-9 or 1-8. They're coming back off the bye. They'll lose to Baltimore. I give them a win against Detroit. They lose to Arizona. They lose to Green Bay. For some reason, I do think late in the season they're going to beat Minnesota. They always find a fluky game in there, but then they lose to Seattle. They lose to the Giants, who are going to need that game, and then they lose to Minnesota, who might be vying for a North Crown against Green Bay. That gets you to 2, if I'm being generous, 3 wins. And I see you guys already tweeting at me. Hey, listen, I'm not the one that, I don't set these totals. I think they're going to be a bad team. I don't know how in the world you find 7.5 wins if you are a Bears team, a Bears fan, for that matter. So you got the Bears and you got the Lions. I think both stink. All right, let's go to Minnesota, which, if you look at Minnesota last year, what hurt Minnesota last year was that start. They were very bad to start the season. And I think that kind of set the table. It set the stage if you were a Minnesota Vikings fan. Go back to the last several years, right? They always have these, goofy starts. And in the NFL, the teams that jump out to that really good start, those are the teams that typically make the playoffs. 2019, they had that great start. They were 7-2. But then look what happened last year. They started off the season 1-5. And their secondary, their defense stunk. They gave up 43 to Green Bay to open up the season, 28 to Indianapolis. They gave up 31 in that crazy game against Tennessee. Jefferson went off. They gave up 27 to Seattle. They gave up 40 to Atlanta. Going into the bye, they were pretty much dead. They showed a little bit of life, winning 5 out of the next 6, but their defense was their bugaboo. 26 to Tampa, 33 to Chicago, 52 to New Orleans, 35 in a win against the Lions. Cousins didn't have a bad year. He really didn't. Cousins is your X factor. It seems like Kirk Cousins is always the X factor. 35 touchdowns, 13 picks, sacked 39 times, but he threw for 4,300 yards. You know they're going to try to control the ball with Cook. They're going to try to run the ball, and they've got weapons with their wide receivers and their tight end, Jefferson, Thielen, Smith. So to open up the season, they go on the road to Cincinnati and Arizona. I'm going to do them a solid. I'm going to give them 2 wins to start the season. Seattle, and then against Cleveland and Detroit. Then they come back. They have 3 straight home wins. They will win 2 out of 3. That gets them to 3-2. They go on the road prior to the bye at Carolina. They get that win. Now you're looking at a 4-2 team. That's you're okay with that. But then the schedule gets goofy. Cowboys loss at Baltimore loss. I'm going to give them a loss on the road against L.A. Green Bay a loss, San Fran a loss. And even if I was being generous, I'm going to give them the W against Detroit. If you add it up, it could be a difference between 2-4, 3-3. Now, 2-4, you're looking at a 6-6 team after 12 games. They lose to Pittsburgh. They beat Chicago. They beat the Rams. They lose to Green Bay. They beat Chicago. If they can find a way, let's just say that stretch in November where I gave them that loss against L.A., they win that game. Maybe, or I'm sorry, the Green Bay or San Francisco, maybe if they get a win right there. 9-8 is now 10-7, which should be enough to at least vie for a wild card spot. But it's that last, like I said, Pittsburgh, Chicago, L.A., Green Bay, Chicago, and then that stretch in November would scare me a little bit if I was a Vikings fan. So 9-8, am I that confident? 9-8, can they hit that 8 mark? Man, I'll tell you, 8.5. Can they get to 9? I think they do. I have them 9-8. The projected win total is 8.5. Odds to make the playoffs, -106, so they're a favorite. Odds to win the NFC North, +250. Live, it's still Green Bay. Odds to win the NFC, +1,700. Odds to win the Super Bowl, +4,000. All right, that leads us to our last team, the Green Bay Packers. And I do believe that this is the year where the Packers take a little bit of a step back. So they open up. This is a team that went all the way to the NFC Championship last year. We know about all the drama in the offseason with Aaron Rodgers. Look, it's still his team. It's not Jordan Love's team, even though you'll probably see a little bit of action from Jordan Love. This team that went 13-3. This is a team that had that NFC Championship, that trophy. It was right there for him. It was right there for him last year. I mean, what games were they really tested? Tampa Bay blew them out. That Minnesota game was a fluky game, and then the Indianapolis game was just one of those high-scoring, okay, you know, it just happens sometimes. But they won 4 in a row to start the season, and then they ended the season on a 6-game winning streak. And they were scoring a ton of points. But as soon as they got into that NFC Championship game, which, again, it's not like Brady played lights out. Tom Brady threw for under 300 and 3 picks. Aaron Rodgers threw for 340 with 3 touchdowns. They were at home again, and Green Bay could have gotten it done. So they still got that bitter taste in their mouth. So they open up against New Orleans on the road, tough spot. I think that's a high-scoring game. I would actually hammer the over in that one. They come back home, Detroit, on the road to San Francisco, and then at home against Pittsburgh, which I think you're going to get a rare loss at home for Rodgers. 3-1. Cincinnati on the road at Chicago, home against Washington. They start to go on a little bit of run. Arizona on the road. I give them 4 straight wins right there. Now you're looking at 7-1. You're feeling pretty darn good about yourselves. Come back to reality a little bit. You lose at Kansas City. A low-scoring, tough game against Seattle. That gets you to 7-3. You rip off 2 straight against Minnesota and then Los Angeles. All right, now you're right back where you want to be, right? You're right back where you want to be. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking at 9 wins, which if you are a Green Bay fan, you would take it. So you're 9-3 as a Packer fan, after 12 games, then you have your bye. You beat Chicago, that gets you to 10. You lose to Baltimore, now you're 10-4. You lose to Cleveland, you're 10-5. I'm going to give them a loss, a Sunday night loss at home to Minnesota that's desperate, and then on the road against Detroit. That is a 11-win team. So the Green Bay Packers, in my estimation, will finish 11-6. Now, here's the question. If you are a Packers fan, because that division, I still think, is a little wonky. If, and this was, the win total bet was back on the board, some books had them with no Rodgers at 10, 10.5, 9, 9.5, depending upon where you're hanging your hat. They went 13-3 in 2019, 13-3 in 2020, and people look like they have a projected record of 9-8. So you have to be very careful. If you can catch them at 10, you're in business, man, because I would play that. I would definitely play that under. I don't believe this is a 11-win team, but I don't believe it's a 9-win team. I think at worst 10-7. I mean, look, if Aaron Rodgers, and this was without him, if Aaron Rodgers goes off like we think he will, then they're no worse 10-7, 11-6. But I think there's a lot more going on there that meets the eye. I really do. I think there's a lot more there that meets the eye. And I think, if anything, if you're Aaron Rodgers, it might be your swan song. You might look at this and say to yourself, all right, I'm ready to go out of here. I'm ready to go on a high note. Right now, to win the North, they're minus 145. So it's telling you right there that they're the favorite to win the North. I mean, we can all agree with that. As I mentioned, the Packers, minus 145, Minnesota, plus 250, Chicago, plus 500, Detroit, plus 1,900. So I think the Bears and the Lions are going to stink. I think the Vikings are going to be a borderline playoff team. And the Packers, if anything, should win that division. But I don't believe they're going to have a campaign where they're going to win more than 12 or 13 games. All right, 4:30, quick timeout. We'll come back on the other